to the first X's and Omar of the season, and it comes in week 2 alongside. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, this is different, right?
Wait a minute.
Things are different right now. This whole season, right? This whole 1 week old season, everything's different.
Nothing has gone according to plan
No.
to start the season for the Dolphins, and neither for us too. X's and Omar. This is Chris Perkins, of course, with the Sun Sentinel, and I'm CBS 12 Sports Director MattLincoln. We are here for X's and Omar. Omar Kelly already in Los Angeles, as is the Dolphins are, to get ready for the Chargers. So. Lots of things obviously have changed with the beginning due to Hurricane Irma. Dolphins have been in Los Angeles for a while now. How has being in Los Angeles, do you believe, helped the team?
I'm not sure it's helped them at all. This is a team, Matt, that you know has already been under some adverse circumstances football-wise, from the injuries with Ryan Tannehill and Ted Larson and Raekwon McMillan and Tony Lippett. Then they spent time in Philadelphia away from home. That was scheduled, practicing against the Eagles and playing the preseason game out there. And then they come back home for a little bit, and now they're back on the road. They're on the road next week against the Jets. They're on the road after that in London against the Saints. So this hasn't helped. They're going to make the best of it. And, no excuses. This is a factor, but it's not an excuse. But man, Matt, I don't see how this could help them, really. You talk about team bonding and all that. You can do that in the locker room and go to your house afterwards. Again, it's a factor. It's not an excuse, but I'm not sure that this can help them very much.
All right, well, on this week's show, we are going to break down how the Dolphins line up against the Chargers. Also, we really even haven't had a preseason post-show, so we're going to talk a little bit about everything that has gone on with the Dolphins this preseason and what we think about the team going into their first game of the season, week 2. Also, we have really huge news about how you can watch this show live and in person. We're going to break that news coming later in the show, and we will take your questions in our X's and Omar overtime after the show's over, so you can tweet us your questions, which you can tweet us your questions using the hashtag XOmar anytime during the show. We'll get to those questions after the show is over. Perk, they're in LA, they're getting ready. Meanwhile, there's lots of stuff going on here, including some breaking news today. Stephen Ross giving $1 million to Hurricane Irma relief, and some good news also about the facilities.
Yeah, facilities, both Hard Rock Stadium and their practice facility in Davie have been cleared structurally. So the Dolphins had a contingency plan to practice in West Virginia at the Greenbrier Country Club there if the facility had not been structurally sound. It is, so they'll be practicing there next week. That's a good thing. Hard Rock Stadium, structurally sound. I believe UM plays Toledo September 23rd, Dolphins October 8th against Tennessee. So, yeah, that is definitely good news. And look, it's nice for Steve Ross to step up the way he did. Look, even going back to the way he flew family and staff out there on Friday and Saturday, they're going to try to have as normal week as possible out there. So people were out there as early as possible, which was on Friday. Steve Ross is flying everybody back on his own dime when it's deemed safe, which I don't know when that's going to be. But nice thing for Steve Ross to do, and good news for the Dolphins and Dolphins fans for the facility, both Hard Rock and out in Davie.
It just goes to show, I've said this on the show a number of times, Dolphins fans should feel lucky that they have Stephen Ross as their owner.
Yeah, and look, Matt, this is a guy who early he just couldn't find the winning formula, but his heart has always been in the right place to me. People criticized him about the orange carpet and the celebrity minority ownership groups and all that kind of stuff, but to me, he was setting an infrastructure, and now he does have the right people, it appears, among Adam Gase, Chris Greer, Mike Tannenbaum. And so we'll see what he can get rolling. But, yeah, he's a good owner, right? It's what you ask for an owner. He doesn't get involved in the day-to-day football decisions. The checkbook is open, and he pretty much stays out of the way.
The checkbook is open. Such a big deal.
Yeah.
So in addition to starting their season in week 2, in addition to having to be in Los Angeles over this whole time, the Dolphins are losing their bye week.
Yeah.
How big of a deal is this?
That's a big deal. That is a big deal, Matt, because you need that week just to recover it. Look at it like this. If you've worked a 6-day week, how that 7th day, that off day just refreshes you and recharges you. That's what it does for a football team and for a football player. So to lose that, that's going to be a factor also. Again, not an excuse. but it's a factor. There's going to be some fatigue. We're going to see how the team is able to manage that with, with players recovering from injuries and things like that. Depth is going to be tested when you talk about offensive line and defensive line and having to rotate players in, but it's just not a good thing. And by the way, we know that Steve Ross also asked the NFL to move the London game back here to Hard Rock Stadium on October 1st. NFL said no, but look, I think Steve Ross probably knew that was going to be the outcome, but Matt, the optics look better both for players and for fans, knowing that their owner tried. He at least tried to do something to help alleviate a difficult situation.
And you can also tell just how important that bye week is by how much the players spoke out about it.
Yeah.
Back when we thought there was an option about whether or not they can move that game, play it somewhere else last week, or lose their bye week, everyone said, fine, play 6 home games, send us to Timbuktu, I don't care where you send us, but do not take away our bye week.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the way it's going to go down for the Dolphins. Let's take our first Twitter question of the show, of the season so far. It comes from Marcos. Adam Gase said they will create their own bye week. How do they approach it? Do they actually rest starters 1 week? Do you think that's a smart move?
No, I don't think that you can afford to do that. We know how tight this league is, 10-6, and you're probably in the playoffs, but sometimes not. Dolphins were last year. You're not going to rest everybody for 1 week, but you might find that there's a snap count some weeks with certain guys that you don't want to play them more than 40 snaps or 45 snaps. You do that 2 or 3 times. Winning is the ultimate goal here, but you do have to keep players fresh. So that's why you can't just rest players for rest starters for 1 week, because you're giving up too much, but you monitor them very closely and you try to get them breaks here and there. And then hopefully at the end of the year, Matt, you can add up the snaps and it adds up to, well, it's a little bit lower because we manage the snaps, and that's kind of how you create your own bye week.
Do the Dolphins have the depth specifically on the offensive line and the defensive front seven?
I think the defensive line does. Here's the funny thing about that O-line, Matt, that we talk about how deficient it was and how injury-ravaged it was last season, but they gave up 30 sacks, the tied for 10th fewest in the NFL, and they led a running game that finished 9th in the NFL. So while they did have a whole lot of injuries and the names weren't what you would expect, they were pretty effective. So, the offensive line, I think, might be a little bit easier than the defensive line as far as just, bottom line performance. I will say this, Jay Ajayi helps that offensive line tremendously. You don't have to hold blocks as long. You don't have to do as much when you have Jay Ajayi back there. Defensively, you have more depth, but offensively, I think you might get better results overall, and that's because of Cutler and Jay Ajayi.
And I would say also that there's been lots of talk in the preseason about how many carries Jay Ajayi is going to get. Yeah. But again, you're losing this bye week. He is a guy that you don't want to wrap up all these carries for this one guy. I would expect to see some Kenyon Drake taking at least a couple drives a game. I'd think that he would go out there and start in the backfield. Yeah,
it's going to be a tricky thing because, again, you've got to win that week and you really can't look too far ahead. But as you say, at the same time, you don't want this guy getting 25 carries a game. I believe that Ajayi had 260 carries last year. You really don't want him going much over that when you combine carries and touches. 23 receptions or something like that. So, you're looking at 283, 285, close to 300. You've still got to manage that. And like you say, with no bye week, maybe you do get Kenyon Drake in there more.
Well, just like last year, Jay Ajayi doesn't have a week 1 game.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about the big storylines from this preseason that we really haven't had a chance to digest because of Hurricane Irma, because really the season is just starting for the Miami Dolphins this week. And let's start with a little bit about what we were just talking about. Last season, what we saw for the Dolphins is that their season turned on its head when they figured out the offensive line.
Yep.
When Omar loves to talk about the unicorns.
Right.
And when they got Brandon Albert, Mike Pouncey, Laramie Tunsil, those guys all in there getting that offensive line set, the whole season turned around. We had the big rushing performance from Jay Ajayi in the Pittsburgh game. Is the offensive line as good as it was last year? Do we know that now?
We don't know, but I suspect it's as good. You know, you do have some strong guys with Mike Pouncey, Laramie Tunsil, Jawan James at center, left tackle, right tackle, respectively. Left guard, we'll see. Anthony Steen should be able to get in there and do a decent job. Jermon Bushrod there on the right side. You do have Anthony Fasano in there actually as a blocking tight end, so that helps a little bit. But I think, this is a situation where, again, if you go man by man and say, well, is he as good as him? Is he as good as him? Is this year's version of Pouncey as good as last year's version of Pouncey? I don't know. But this is a bottom line thing. Again, 10th fewest sacks, or tied for 10th fewest sacks, 9th best rushing game. And the way we looked at that offensive line last year, you wouldn't have suspected it. So I prefer to look bottom line. Man by man, maybe they're not as good, but collectively, can they be effective? Yeah, I think they can.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I think that's the big question, certainly from this offense. We'll talk about the quarterback in a second, but we know the weapons that they have. Certainly wide receiver and running back, put them all together. Hard to find. They're certainly in the discussion of the best wide receivers and running backs in the entire NFL.
Right.
So the question is, when you look at that offensive line, we've got a no-name guy playing left guard. We've got a guy playing left tackle for the first time
at the NFL
in the NFL level. And we've got a center who's not practicing because we're so scared about how hurt he could be.
The hip,
And then there's basically no depth.
Yep.
So if the magic that they somehow found, and again that's without Brandon Albert, who by all intents and purposes was the second leader on that line
on
with
and
Pouncey,
off the field.
on and off the field.
Right.
And you've taken what was a strength in left guard and weakened that position by putting that good player at left tackle. I really wonder, is this an offensive line that can open the types of holes that it did for Jay Ajayi last year?
I think they can. I think a lot of it depends on Jay Ajayi and how effective he is. Again, he makes their jobs a lot easier. He made Ryan Tannehill's job easier. He made Matt Moore's job easier. Go through the offensive line, go to the receivers when they're playing 8-man fronts because they're afraid that Jay Ajayi is just going to bludgeon them the entire game. This is a running back who gets stronger as the game goes on. So I really think that Jay Ajayi is the guy who makes that offensive line better. He makes that passing game better. And if you can't tell, Matt, I think Jay Ajayi is the most important offensive player on this team, probably the most important player on this team, period, because of how he makes everybody's life easier, because of how he makes it easier for the quarterback and the receivers and the offensive line and Adam Gase as a play caller. And he gives hope to that defense. You remember last year, the Dolphins were way down in time of possession. You feed Jay Ajayi the ball and you keep time of possession and you get into third and manageable situations, another weakness for that offense last year. So if Jay Ajayi can keep going, he covers a lot for that offensive line. I really think that that's a big key, Matt.
Well, I think we might disagree on what's the most. Is it the offensive line leaving the holes for Ajayi, or is it Ajayi that's making the offensive line look better?
So you're an offensive line
I'm
guy.
the offensive line guy.
So you've got the Omar Kelly disease.
I just saw it. We just saw it last year.
Right.
Boom. The whole season changed.
Well, here's what
they went from being terrible, almost losing the Cleveland,
you're right.
to
Exactly.
becoming an entirely different team. They kicked two guys to the curb and got Brandon Albert healthy, had Mike Pouncey in there, and all of a sudden they became a dominant running game.
Yeah, a power running team. That's what they switched from a passing game that Adam Gase wanted. And so, but I will tell you this, as effective as that offensive line was, you only had Mike Pouncey for 5 games.
True.
So, again, it's a collective thing. You can't look at Craig Urbick or Anthony Steen. No, you have to look at the collective, and they were effective, I think, largely because of Jay Ajayi, that he just provided that extra element, that extra boost. He lessened their load, and he made life easier for everybody else.
I'm not taking away from Ajayi. I think he's a very good back. But
I think
it's certainly a little bit of both.
Yeah, Omar is on your side on this. Yeah.
We spent the whole preseason talking about the quarterback position.
Right.
Ryan Tannehill's gone. Jay Cutler is here. We've gone from the Dolphins are in serious trouble to, wait a minute, are they better with Jay Cutler?
Right.
So let's ask that question. Do you feel like this Dolphins offense is better with Jay Cutler than Ryan Tannehill?
I wouldn't say better. I think they can be just as good, just as effective. When you look at the way that Ryan Tannehill plays the game, it's no wonder that Jarvis Landry is his favorite target, right? He's a little bit more conservative, Tannehill I'm talking about. He likes the check down, I shouldn't say the check down, I should say the short and intermediate routes. Jay Cutler, Devontae Parker seems like that's going to be his guy. Jay Cutler has more of that, let's take this thing downfield. I want a big receiver, and Devontae Parker fits that bill. We haven't seen Devontae Parker and Jay Cutler together for very long because Jay Cutler was signed so late, but the time that we have seen them, Jay Cutler knows how to take advantage of that guy. So from that standpoint, I think you're going to be as good. You're not going to be worse. I don't know if you'll be better, but you'll be as good. Both quarterbacks, their only season under Adam Gase, they had a career-high passer rating. We know Tannehill was, 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 93.5. Cutler in 2015, 21 and 11, I believe, and 92.3. So similar, and I know Ryan missed 3 games, but similar numbers under Adam Gase. So I think we'll get a similar performance.
I think that's true. I think what's interesting, though, is you look at last year, again, when that offensive line got right, Ryan Tannehill did not lose a game.
You're right. You're exactly
for
right.
the Dolphins. The 3 games that they lost after that offensive line got right were all games they were underdogs in that they probably should have lost. But he did find a couple ways to help lead the team to wins. We know what we're getting from Jay Cutler. You know, now I feel
you're
we've
right.
Cutler has
11
his career.
years, right? We know.
We see it.
I agree.
The question is how many games will he cost the Dolphins, and how many games will he actually that Cutler part of him actually pull out victories with? And I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't either.
I don't think it's many, though.
No.
I think these other questions that the Dolphins have are much more integral to determining how they perform over the quarterback play.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, because I think that Cutler is a fairly known quantity, and you work around his weaknesses and you play to his strengths. Adam Gase knows those very well. Again, I think the result will be similar. They'll just, between Cutler and Tannehill, they'll just go about it differently, right? With, again, Tannehill short intermediate passes, likes to use his legs, and Cutler is just, let's get this thing downfield. Let's stop wasting time. Let's get this thing down the field. Back shoulder throws that you didn't see Ryan Tannehill make a lot. We see that from Jay Cutler. He likes to really go over the top with these things, to throw it up for Devontae, have a jump ball. So we'll see a lot of that we didn't see from Tannehill. But again, comparable quarterbacks. One thing with your offensive line issue, it will be interesting to see how much Cutler needs his agility and mobility and his legs to occasionally escape pass rush. That's not something that he's known for, something that Tannehill was very adept at. But we'll see with Cutler.
But I think Cutler's better pocket awareness.
Yes, I think so.
Probably cancels that out.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think from what we've discussed so far, we like the weapons, certainly. The offensive line, we'll see. The quarterbacks are comparable. Really, how good this team is going to depend on how all these questions get answered on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, now that's going to be the interesting part. I'm not sure that run defense has been fixed. We know that they were 30th last year at 140.4 yards per game. The pass defense, I have a little more faith in. They didn't show very well during the preseason, the secondary I'm talking about. But I have more faith in them than I do in the front 7 when it comes to stopping the run. The other thing, Matt, is I think that this could be kind of a big play defense. The type of defense that gets the strip sack and causes fumbles, that gets the interceptions, and we saw a little bit of that in the preseason. So I think that as opposed to being a fundamentally sound defense that will just shut down the run and everything like that, there might be some leakage, but they'll create a fumble or they'll get an interception, and then they'll help the offense with field position and time of possession and all that kind of stuff. Because fundamentally, I've got to be convinced that this is a solid defense. But I think they can make plays.
Well, they had that quality last year.
Right,
when
exactly.
they had fewer playmakers, you'd think. Obviously, the game in San Diego last year with Kiko bringing the game-winning pick 6. The question is all those other pieces that sort of failed last year, defensive tackle up the middle, other linebacker spots, are they better? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question yet.
Davin Godchaux is an interesting case because I think he could be as good as Jordan Phillips was last year and as good as Earl Mitchell had been for the past couple of years. Vincent Taylor, how's he going to be? Well, we'll wait and see. But I think they did a good job with those 2 picks. Godshaw, the 5th-round pick out of LSU. Taylor, the 6th-round pick out of Oklahoma State. Raekwon McMillan, the 2nd-round pick out of Ohio State, will be a big loss for run defense. He had the potential to be a headbanger. That's what he showed us in college. Now in comes Ray Maualuga, overweight,
maybe
out of shape, right? maybe. And so that's a very interesting deal with him, because really what the Dolphins need him to do is be a veteran, be a 250-pound downhill running middle linebacker. That's it. They don't need him to go to the Pro Bowl, and then you come off the field for the passing plays. But we don't even know if he's equipped to be that.
Yeah, and I think even more than the passing plays, you do get the feeling like the nickel corner is going to be on the field more often than the third linebacker.
Yeah, no, that's true. But here's the catch on that one, Matt, is that if teams are rushing for 140 yards per game, and the time of possession is creeping up, then you do have an issue, right? Le'Veon Bell, $167 in the playoff game. So while that middle linebacker does not spend as much time on the field as the nickel, we all know that. It was like 1/3 in base, 2/3 in nickel last year. He's got to be effective. They cannot give up 140 yards again. And it's not all the middle linebacker, but that's a big part of it.
And the question of whether or not that nickel cornerback's any good is also a good question.
I like Bobby McCain.
Okay.
You know what? I really do. He's not a flashy guy. He's not going to pop up. And I know there are a lot of plays where, goal line and somebody scores a touchdown and Bobby McCain is the nearest defender. And so we all go, oh, there goes Bobby McCain. I think Bobby McCain is fine. I think he's capable. We thought Alterin Werner was going to come in here and challenge him. And no, he's challenging Byron Maxwell at the left corner. So the fact that they didn't really give that much competition to Bobby during camp, inviting other people in, tells me that they have faith in him. I think he's fine.
Okay, that'd be good to see. Let's take another Twitter question about, you talked about Godshaw a little bit. Might be, this is from Jersquall, might be too early to ask, but from this rookie class, can you see a diamond in the rough who might shine long term?
Yeah, it's got to be Davin Godshaw, the 5th-round pick out of LSU. Look, this kid has come in there. He's been taking on double teams. He's been holding his ground. He's hard to push back off the line of scrimmage. If you watch him and Ndamukong Suh, and it's like, all right, well, there's a wall right there. Sure. They're going up the middle, so that's a good thing. And then I mentioned Raekwon McMillan. He's also a guy, diamond in the rough in the 2nd round. That doesn't really apply, but somebody who could be good long term. Yeah, look at Raekwon. Charles Harris, the 1st-round pick out of Missouri. Low key, Matt. We don't know. I think he has some potential. Somebody was asking me if he could get 5 sacks this year, and I was saying, yeah, that's probably the over/under 5 or 6 because he's only going to be used in passing situations.
Sure.
So he's not going to be getting a lot of snaps. I think he can, but he's also wait and see.
That's the crazy thing about being a defensive end, though. If he makes one big play a game, he's had a great season, incredible season. All you got to do is make one play.
Exactly. Hey, you get on SportsCenter and people remember it. Yeah, that's good.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this game specifically and how the Dolphins match up against the Los Angeles Chargers. And I know you've got a lot of questions about that, so let's just dive right into some of your questions about the Dolphins against the Chargers. We've had some interesting sort of, I guess we've been able to see Los Angeles play.
That's
once.
Good. You caught yourself. That's good.
I was going to try to get away with it.
I know, it's tough.
What is your impressions after they almost beat Denver on Monday night?
Well, they were down in time of possession. The Chargers were talking about 34 to 25 minutes. And one thing that they couldn't run the ball very effectively, the Chargers couldn't, with Melvin Gordon back there. So that's one thing that gives the Dolphins optimism. I'll say this, you do worry about the weapons that they have among Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates and Keenan Allen and Kelvin Benjamin and Tyrell Williams. They've got some weapons.
Travis
there.
Benjamin.
Travis Benjamin.
Right, the other Benjamin.
Yeah, the other Benjamin. That's right. But they do have some weapons out there that can cause some problems. And Phillip Rivers, I mean, let's face it. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Some don't, but whatever. He's a good quarterback who can cause you major problems. So that's on offense, and then over there on defense, where you've got to deal with Joey Bosa, six tackles last week. A sack and a half. You got Casey Hayward over there at corner. He led the NFL in interceptions last year with 7, went to the Pro Bowl. So they do have some guys that you've got to keep an eye on.
Sort of kind of feels like the Dolphins.
Exactly.
In a way. Big play guys that you have to try to limit them, but also you can kind of get some yards when you need to.
Right.
All right, now let's take your first question from Twitter. This comes from Corey. Can Juwan James handle Bosa this week? And what do you expect from the Miami run game?
Oh, Juwan James better be able to handle Joey Bosa. Look, that's our local kid from St. Thomas. This guy is a beast. He is an absolute beast, and he can cause major headaches for the passing game of the Dolphins. So we've got to make sure. Look, Melvin Ingram over there on the other side also. So we had Tunsil against him. They've got two defensive ends. Both of them had a sack and a half last week. But, as far as that Bosa matchup, that's a big, big key. Cam Wake plays on that side, on the left side, because a lot of teams think that, okay, let them put their stud at the left tackle. Right. We'll hit them from the right tackle spot. So that's a huge matchup over there. As far as running the ball, the Dolphins better be able to run the ball, right? Jay Ajayi, you know what I think of Jay Ajayi and how important he is. If they can't get that running game going, that offense is in some trouble.
All right, let's take our next question from you guys. This comes from Hank. Will Keenan Allen feast on the DBs, or can the front seven cause Phillip Rivers to be uncomfortable?
Boy, Keenan Allen is a good one, man.
Yeah,
I think he is going to have some success. The combination of him and Phillip Rivers. What you don't want is for San Diego to get Melvin Gordon and the running game going, and then you're playing more 8-man fronts because you're scared of that, and then you're giving Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen one-on-one situations. I like Xavier Howard on the right side at cornerback. I think this kid is really ready to emerge, and whatever you consider a number one cornerback, I think that's what he's ready to develop into this year. On the other side, again, Byron Maxwell and Alterin Verner kind of fighting out that starting spot. That's a vulnerability. The front seven, can they counteract that? Well, again, they better.
They better,
They better, Matt, because otherwise, I'm not sure that I like those matchups where if you just give Phillip Rivers, 4 seconds to get rid of the ball, it'll be a long day.
Yeah, like you talked about Benjamin Tyrell Williams, another tough guy.
Yep.
And they have 2 tight ends that can catch the ball.
Right.
So there's all sorts of weapons that they can throw at you. You can't let Gordon beat you.
Yep. Yeah, interestingly, the tight ends were only targeted 3 times last week, so look for that to change.
Yeah.
Antonio Gates with 2 receptions, look for that to change this week.
All right, let's take your next question. Jordan, who do you expect to be the biggest factor Miami needs to utilize to stop Melvin Gordon?
I don't know if you can say a who, it's a what. It's the defensive line. That's your first line of defense. You've got to be able to stop them up the middle with Godshaw and Sue, and then set the edge with Cam Wake and Andre Branch. Do not let these guys get through there. I mean, that's the bottom line. We know he's going to get yards, but you've got to really limit the effectiveness of that run game. And D-line, that's the first line of defense. You've got to be active out there. We'll see what we get from Ray Malaluga. Maybe Mike Hall steps in and plays more than we expect at the middle. But, Sue and Godshaw and Taylor, all those defensive tackles, they've got to be the ones who stop it along with the ends, the D-line, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be talking about this a lot. The keys to the defense are going to be Devon Godshaw, Byron Maxwell. Those 2 guys cannot be taken advantage of.
No, they can't. And look, you do have to get something out of the middle linebacker, and it would be nice if the first-round pick, Charles Harris, could make his presence felt, because then you really have a really good, and I forgot to mention William Hayes in the run stuffing at the defensive end, because that's his specialty. But you would have a nice pass rushing combination at the ends with Harris and Branch and Cam Wake. You would have a nice rotation. So if Harris can come in and contribute, you talk about stopping Phillip Rivers, that could be a big key.
In this preseason, you've watched a lot of Rashad Jones.
Yep.
100% healthy?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think so. And look, he's a big, as we all know, to stopping the run. He'll be the 8th man in the box. They'll bring him down. He'll essentially be another linebacker. But, Rashad's a headbanger, man.
Yeah,
he's ready to get out there. Played, 6 games last year, I believe it was. Yeah, he's looked good in the preseason. They really, really need him, and both against the pass and especially against the run.
All right. We've got another Twitter question. Let's take our next one. Nick, what is the biggest concern we should have going into this week against the Chargers?
Boy, I think it's just the overall mood of the week from the Hurricane Irma disruption.
Yeah.
That where is this team's mind going to be? You're dealing with not having played last week, and I think it's interesting, Matt, and you can chime in on this. Who has the advantage this week when you look at the Dolphins?
Short week for the Chargers.
Well, yeah, short week for the Chargers, but they already know what they have. The Dolphins don't know what they have. They've played a game. They can make corrections, but the Dolphins are a well-rested team. I don't know if if that makes sense coming off the Irma
right.
disruption. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody has an advantage from that situation. But to me, it's the mental. It's kind of where are the Dolphins' minds at? Are they ready to play an NFL game on Sunday? But I don't know if anybody gets an advantage
I've thought
this
a lot
week from
about
that
that.
standpoint.
I've thought a lot about that too. Is all this stuff is going on at home. Where would you rather be? If you're the Miami Dolphins,
Yeah.
I think you'd rather be on the road.
Yes, you would.
You
You
don't
would.
know.
You
You
would.
don't know what's going on at home. You don't
Right.
feel it.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
You're
you know
taking
there's
every day.
chaos.
It's a work day today. It's
Yeah.
a work day today.
Right.
It's a work day today.
Right.
It's a work day today.
Right.
And I think that's all better for the Dolphins. I think they'll be ready. I don't think they'll be caught off guard. I think they'll be ready.
Yeah, it's been an unusual week for them, to say the least, when you look at the disruptions and the worry about your home, and at least Stephen Ross got the families out there, as we talked about earlier, so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, you some of them have families down here, right? Sam Young is a local. So some of them have families down here, and you're worried about them back here, cousins and aunts and uncles and all kinds of relatives down here. So you've got friends down here, the players who have been down here for years, and you're worried about them. You've got neighbors. So it's good to be in California, but that's still, I'm sure, on a lot of the players' minds. But no, you're 100% right. If I'm a player and if I'm a coach or an owner or whatever, it's better that your team is away from the chaos here of who knows how many of them have electricity at home, et cetera, et cetera. So no, you're right about that.
All right, I'm going to drop this on you because I don't think we talked about this, but we do predictions on this show.
Let's do it,
So I'm going to
man.
go
Let's
on.
do
All
it.
right, you think about it.
All right.
It might feel like a cop-out, but I feel like the way what we've talked about with this, the way these two defenses work,
Yep.
I think we're going to see a shootout. I think we're going to see a lot of points. I also think we're going to see a fair amount of turnovers in this game.
Yep.
I think we're going to, because of Cutler and Rivers, they like to sling it along.
They do.
And I feel like whichever team wins the turnover battle, wins this game, I'm going to take the Chargers in this game, 33-28.
Oh, wow. You know what? I'm also going to take the Chargers. It's a home game for them. They've been the team that's had the least amount of disruptions. It's the season opener for the Dolphins. The Chargers can make some corrections based off what they saw, right? They came close to beating Denver, and Vance Joseph, ex-Dolphins defensive coordinator, 24-21 lost the blocked field goal late in the game. Just give me, let's say, 27-24 Chargers.
All right. I'm going to write that down because you won't remember.
All right. No, because I'm going to have to make my pick for the
Right.
Sun Sentinel, for the paper. So, yeah, mark that
All right.
down. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So guess what? Omar's going to be back next week, and we
Out
are.
of Gulfstream.
Yes, it's
Out
very
at
exciting.
Gulfstream,
We're going to
man.
be live at Gulfstream Park doing the rest of the shows this season, and it's going to be open for you to come out and watch the show live, ask us questions live. We were hoping to actually have it running before week 3, but Irma had other plans. So we will be live for the rest of the season at Gulfstream Park. You can hit us up on Twitter for if you have more questions about how you can join the show from this point forward. Also, we are back on podcasts on iTunes, so you can listen to X's and Omar just by searching X's and Omar on iTunes. We are also doing X's and Omar overtime. So if you've had any questions during the show, tweet us at #XOmar, and we will be answering your question in just moments. So hang tight. For Perk, I'm Link. I don't know. All right. That's X's and Perks.
that.
That's X's and Perks.
That's right.
We'll see you next week. And welcome to X's and Omar Overtime. Alongside Chris Perkins, I'm Matt Lincoln. Thank you so much for watching the first show of the season.
Should I have taken the jacket off? I should have been more casual, right? Because this is the overtime.
You want to?
Well, I got the mic attached to
okay.
Yeah, so I'm not as, yeah, so you got a tie. You got more class.
I've got my
than I do.
microphone in my jacket, so I
Yeah.
can't do it either. All right, I'll button back up. Okay, so we're going to take some of your questions on Twitter and also some of the questions that you've had in the YouTube chat. So we're going to take your YouTube chat questions first. So, Josh, Miami had the third worst run defense last year. Are they better equipped to handle the run this year? Can they contain a player like Melvin Gordon?
That is a great question, Josh, and we don't know the answer to that. That's a big key to the season.
Yeah.
I mean, can you stop the run? 28th 2 years ago, 30th last year, and you've got to be better because, or else, you know, you heard Clyde Christensen and Ryan Tannehill during the offseason talk about the lack of the number of offensive plays that they ran. They were last in the NFL in offensive plays, and a big part of that was because they couldn't stop the run, they couldn't control time of possession, and so other teams are reeling off these 12, 14 play drives. They're getting into third and manageable situations because they've gained yards on first and second down on the ground, and so that leads to the 8-man front and a lot of one-on-one opportunities, and everything just goes downhill. So they better be able to stop that run and stop Melvin Gordon. He's going to be fired up. What do you have? 56 yards last week, 65 yards rushing, something like that. Coach Anthony Lynn was saying that Melvin Gordon's got to be more effective. By the way, Anthony Lynn, a guy very familiar with the Dolphins, has been in the division with the Jets and the Bills since '09. So there's a familiarity there. And it works the other way, too. The Dolphins know what he likes to do. But you can bet he's going to try and get Melvin Gordon going. And if the Dolphins can't stop him, I suspect he'll be fairly effective. They're going to have a hard time winning.
Yeah, and Gordon's not a big speedster. He's not a guy who's going to break off a 60-yarder. Even, I think probably Ajayi is still even more of a dangerous runner than Melvin Gordon is. But
he's dual purpose. He's a yardage guy.
Right.
You look up after the game, and he's got like 119 yards from scrimmage, and it's like, wow, he was pretty effective.
And I think that, I mean, there are two ways to be bad against the run, right? There's not being able to stop guys from getting 15-yard chunks,
right,
and there's not being able to stop teams on 3rd and 1.
Right.
You know, so, and Gordon's kind of that 3rd and 1 guy. He can get it, you know, even though that offensive line, I don't think for San Diego is that great.
Right.
But and when it's the first 3rd and 1 of the season.
Right, exactly.
You know,
what's going to happen?
And
look, the other thing, Matt, with being able to stop the run is, you know how close NFL games are now. You know, if you're down by 3 with, say, 6-7 minutes to go, you cannot let that team run the clock out. You cannot, and that's what Jay Ajayi is good for. He gets stronger as the game goes on. He helps you be able to protect a lead. And on the other side, when you're trying to get that ball back, you've got to be able to stop the run, get them into a 3rd and long, get the ball back to your offense so they can go drive and kick the game-tying field goal or whatever.
That being said, you know, I picked the Chargers to win 33-28.
Yeah.
What's the more likely way that happens? Phillip Rivers throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, or Melvin Gordon rushes for 150 yards and 3 scores? Wow. I think it's Rivers, right? I think there's a better chance that Rivers goes off in this game than Gordon goes off in this game.
I would say so. I just don't trust the Dolphins' run defense, but when you look at the talent, I depend on Phillip Rivers more to win a game than Melvin Gordon. But when you look at vulnerabilities, any running back can get $150 on the Dolphins. But I think but I think you're right. Phillip Rivers, he's the number one guy that you're going to target as a defense.
All right, let's take our next question from the YouTube chat from DJ Man. The Miami Dolphins just extended TJ contract, and last time I checked, the Dolphins. It's TJ McDonald. Last time I checked, the Dolphins do not have all the money in the world. So what are they going to do about Jarvis's contract situation? What do you think they're going to do about Landry?
It really doesn't have much to do with TJ McDonald's money. That's separate. Jarvis's situation is he's a slot receiver who wants to get paid as an outside receiver. We remember this from Jimmy Graham, right? He's a tight end who said he should be paid as a wide receiver. So that's kind of the thing that's going to be in Jarvis's way more than available money. It's the Dolphins probably don't want to give him as much money as he wants. What's going to happen? I don't know. If you franchise Jarvis, you're going to end up paying him $15 million or whatever it is.
I don't think they're going to do that.
No, you're going to end up paying him more than you would have on a multi-year deal. So I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to start sounding alarms and say goodbye to Jarvis Landry this last year in a Dolphins uniform, but something dramatic has to happen.
The question is there someone out there who will pay him that? That's the question.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. You're a slot receiver. You're not a prime NFL desire.
Right.
You're a necessity, but as far as you're not Julio Jones or you're not Antonio Brown. You're not going downfield causing that kind of damage. Jarvis is steady and sturdy and excitable and electric and all that, but he's just not the same over-the-top type guy.
I totally understand the answer to this question is going to depend on how well Devontae Parker plays this year.
Yeah.
But the contract situations are a little different because the timing is different. Mm-hmm. But knowing what we know up to this point, if you had to pay, are you taking Devontae or taking Jarvis?
Ooh, I've got to see it from Devontae. That's the whole thing with Devontae. Look, Matt, talent-wise, I think Devontae might have the most raw talent of anybody on that team. I'm including Ndamukong Suh, Rashad Jones, Jay Cutler, Jay Ajayi. This kid is just talented. I mean, the game comes so easily for him, but he's got to do the other things that come with it as far as hydration and nutrition and rest and being places when you say you're going to be there. The injury's not really his fault, the foot and the hamstring, but he's got to be more professional. If he takes care of that stuff off the field, this kid could be a monster, as wide receivers coach Sean Jefferson said, and he could be poised for, I think, a gigantic year, is what offensive coordinator Clyde Christensen said. This kid is good. Yeah.
You take the grit, toughness, and attitude of Landry and give it to Devontae Parker.
He's an all-pro. Right, he's an all-pro.
Next, from YouTube, Luke. Who are the top 5 players that can make or break another playoff appearance this season?
Jay Ajayi. Jay Ajayi is number one.
That's for you.
That's for me. Yeah, that's for me. That's for me. Let's see. Cutler, definitely. Devontae Parker. Boy, now who would be the others? They've got to be defensive players.
They've got to be defensive players, I think. Also, Laramie Tunsil has got to be
He's got to be Laramie Tunsil from Ole Miss.
Yeah.
He's got to be solid, like a top tackle. Not, all pro, but a top tier. Top third of the league or whatever you want to say. I've got Ajayi, Cutler, Parker, Cam Wake. And you know what, man? I'll just say middle linebacker.
Yeah.
Whether it's Hull or Malaluga or a player to be named later. So I'm going to go Ajayi, Cutler, Parker, Wake, and the middle linebacker position. Sue has been very effective the previous 2 years. I don't know, it's better to have him than not. Brent Grimes was very effective. You didn't get to the playoffs with him. It's hard to pick these guys, but that's who I'm going with.
It's hard to pick those guys, too, because I feel like this is 2 different questions, right? You're asking, okay, who needs to be the Dolphins' 5 best players?
Yep.
You can look at the answer to this question that way.
Right.
Or you can answer the question of, who are the 5 keys to the season?
Yeah.
Meaning guys that
gotta perform.
We really don't know necessarily how good they are, how good they could be. You could argue that Parker belongs on both of those.
Parker's at the top. He's probably at the top.
But I feel like I got a good feeling about what we're going to get out of Jay Ajayi. I feel like I know what we're going to get out of Jay Ajayi. I don't feel like I necessarily know what we're going to get out of Laramie Tunsil or Byron Maxwell or the middle linebacker, the left guard.
Yeah, Ted Larson will be back, but hopefully, it's sooner rather than later for the offensive line's sake.
I don't know if I can come up with 5.
That's many questions. I know they have so many questions. And look, I'll tell you this: Adam Gase might belong on that list from the standpoint of he was very instrumental and responsible for that turnaround from 1-4 to 10-6. His actions, benching the 2 veterans and cutting the 3 offensive linemen, leaving Jay Ajayi at home. I mean, Adam Gase wanted to set a tone, and apparently the message got through. So, I might have to actually even have Gase on the. He's not a player. It might have specifically asked for players.
Yeah.
But people
in
importance.
some ways, I'm sure he would have rather not had the season start this way and to not go without a bye. But you know what? These are big-time coaching moments.
Yep.
These are big-time, ways to get the guys motivated
Yeah.
and bond together. And we're going through adversity and all
and
that
we did
kind
it
of
last
stuff.
year, right?
That can actually lead to some positive things happening.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Twitter and get some of the questions from you guys. Let's see, something that we haven't answered already. Remy, is Cutler's better pocket presence, will that help improve the red zone troubles?
That's a good question because I'm not sure that Ryan Tannehill's pocket presence caused a lot of red zone problems. The tight end position, we haven't talked about Julius Thomas, and when you talk about red zone, that's somebody who has to come through. Cutler found him for the 1-yard touchdown pass. Philly, I think. Yeah, so, but we hadn't seen that relationship at all. Julius Thomas has been very low-key during training camp and preseason. I think that Julius Thomas could help more than Jay Cutler's pocket presence. And I know you didn't ask about Julius Thomas,
right.
But I think when you look at red zone and how the field is compacted and you need big bodies, Devontae and Julius Thomas is better than Tannehill's.
Yeah, there are 3 types of tight ends. There's your tight end that can do just about anything, can go down the seam and catch a big play, shows lots of athleticism, the Gronk type of guy.
Yeah, what
and
Gates used to be.
Yeah, what is there, maybe 6, 7 guys that can do
handful.
that. Then you've got the tight ends that block a lot, but also in short yardage situations, in the red zone can make plays.
Yep.
And then you've
Fasano is kind of like that.
And then you've got your third group that just basically blocks.
Right.
And I think Julius Thomas used to be in the first.
Definitely used to be.
But if he can be in the middle group, if he can just score, maybe he catches 7, 8 touchdowns, makes some big plays. That's going to be such a big.
7 or 8 touchdowns would be huge.
7 or 8 touchdowns.
That would be huge. I mean, they would be ecstatic.
He only needs to catch like 500 yards.
Right.
They have all these weapons on the outside. They don't need to make big plays in the middle of the field.
Yep.
But when they get down there and
he's got to be an
Jarvis
option.
is neutralized a little bit, and Kenny Stills is neutralized.
Yeah, Jarvis is a slot receiver, and coaches will always tell you it's easier to double team those guys. So all that traffic in the middle and everything like that. You've got your outside guys, but you need that other guy, and that's Julius Thomas.
Box it out, throw it to a window, and
make yourself big like in basketball, right?
I just lost it. My phone just froze up. Let's get another question.
Linebacker play is going to be interesting. We haven't mentioned Kiko Alonso and Lawrence Timmons either. Kiko on the weak side, Timmons on the strong side. Timmons had kind of a low-key training camp, but he was taking heads off in preseason games. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. What kind of attitude can he bring to that defense, specifically to the run defense? Timmons does not mess around. So if you get him, you get Sue, you get Rashad, you get Cam Wake, you get some hard heads out there against the run to set a tone. Kiko has that same attitude, but he's just a little small. These guys can preach it and live it and do it, and that can become infectious. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Lawrence Timmons brings to that defense, specifically on the run. That's
one of the things I'm worried just a little bit about. Is we've talked about, and lots of it has been written about this team having, 1 to 12 or 15. They are really good.
Really good.
Lots of players that you'd want anywhere.
Yep.
But then the other 40
then
guys,
it falls off, right? No, you're exactly right.
You're not so sure about.
Yeah, and I think that the Dolphins have done a good job under Gase and Tannenbaum and Chris Greer of making guys better. In other words, you draft them and you make them better. You coach them up. You bring them up in your system. Tony Lippett, perfect example of a guy who got better. He came here and he got better. Bobby McCain, I don't know, Jay Ajayi, but that's a 5th-round pick, So you see a lot of that, and I think that when you talk about the roster, numbers, whatever, 12 through 53 or whatever you want to pick, that's a lot of your player development, not just training camp, but since last year, and they've been in your off-season program, and they've been in these moments from last season. Now, are they going to improve this season? They didn't make the play last year. It was over their head. Have you coached them up? Have they seen enough football that now, this year, they will make that play? That's a big key.
Yeah, and I think last year, too, the Dolphins, they were better at little guys, or not little guys, but secondary players.
Sam Young
BC
players
guys coming in and making big plays.
Yeah.
Kenyon Drake had a game-winning touchdown
Jakeem
in return.
Grant.
Jakeem Grant, we haven't talked about, also could be a playmaker. Steven asks, short week and a loss or rust/hurricane/travel? What's the more important factor this Sunday?
Rust week and a loss or the hurricane? Oh, boy, that's...
what's more tougher mentally?
I've got to say it's the hurricane travel and the stress of just the disruption. This isn't just a situation of where, you had a lightning strike at the facility and now you have to leave. There was disruption and chaos, down here. And I mean that relative, I don't want to disrespect anybody in the Keys or anything like that. But there was disruption and chaos as far as finding gas, and do you have electricity on right now, and did a tree fall in your house on top of your house and cause damage, and how are your friends, how are your relatives, and when I get back, am I going to be able to find gas? Is my water running? Is my elevator working? All that, I think that's more stressful than coming off of a loss or having rust or being on a short week or playing that Thursday night game. I think this is more disruptive.
Right. All that said, though, I think they know going through all of that and then also losing makes it all that much worse. Let's take one more question that comes from Jimmy. He just sent this in. Has Grant fixed his punt drop issue to give the special teams that extra explosiveness?
So far in the preseason, it looks like he's done very well addressing that issue. I don't think he's mishandled a punt or a kickoff in a preseason game. Yeah, we saw it a little bit in practice, but in a game we have not seen it. The Dolphins hope that he is. Look, this is a guy who, you talk about guys coaching up guys and the guys 12 through 53 on your roster. This is a guy who is a test case for that, right? Because last year, he had a lot of problems handling kickoffs and punts, and he was only a slot receiver whose hands were shaky and his route running was shaky. Now he's an outside receiver, hands are better, route running is better, he's handled the ball better on kickoffs and punts. He's a guy who, if you just feel that if he could handle that ball and secure it, he can do some damage. He could score more than one touchdown on a return during the season. So is he over it? Well, we've seen good signs of that. We aren't going to know till we're a third of the way into the season. Does that confidence grow? Another thing to look for from the coaches on that front, if the Dolphins are catching a punt deep in their own territory, do they bring in Jarvis Landry for the secure hands, or do you trust Jakeem? That's how you'll know whether the coaches think Jakeem has made progress.
Right. Well, and tell me if I'm wrong, but in the South Florida media, there are two more polar opposites on Jakeem Grant than you and Omar over there?
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
That's true. I support. He's a fellow Texan.
Sure.
Yeah, I support my Texans.
Well, and I would say this on Grant. I think one thing, and certainly the season hasn't even started yet, but he has shown in the preseason, which means nothing,
right,
that he could become a weapon. Something, somewhere, sometime down the line may make a play or two or three that could win a game.
Yeah.
And I would say that everyone that sort of wrote him off, maybe we can't write off fifth-round picks in their rookie year. At the same time, the Dolphins were in a position where they were relying on a fifth-round pick in their rookie season to make important plays, and that was probably as much on them as it is on everyone else for giving up on it.
And I'll tell you this about Jakeem from scrimmage. We saw him make some impressive plays in preseason games, and I know a few people told me, but he's playing against backups when he's in the regular season, blah, blah, blah. Well, look at it like this. There's always a time in the regular season you're going to catch somebody with injuries, and their fourth cornerback is going to be out there, or their fifth cornerback. that's when you can get Jakeem in that one-on-one situation. Jay Ajayi has been pounding on him. They have to play an 8-man front, and you get Jakeem against the 4th or 5th cornerback on a certain team. You make eye contact with Jay Cutler. This is the one. You can go over. You're not going to do this on Richard Sherman or Patrick Peterson, but you get another corner and maybe, and it's not going to happen every game, but maybe 4 or 5 times in a season, you do get a chance to take advantage of that, and maybe he scores 2 touchdowns this season off of that.
Or, DBs are sprinting up and back with Stills and Devontae Parker.
Get a
and
little
then those
fatigue.
guys, when you're moving fast, check out.
Yeah.
Then you check in Jakeem Grant and have him run a sprint, and there aren't many people that can keep up with him.
Yeah. He's got a lot of potential as a weapon, but run routes, catch that ball, and secure it.
Catch the ball.
That's kind of, you're a receiver, right? You're a receiver and return man. Secure the ball.
All right, enjoy this perk.
Oh, me too, Matt.
You can fill in whenever.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, I appreciate that.
Omar, maybe you should skip shows more often.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that?
But I agree.
I said it.
That's good.
Thank you so much for watching or listening on to the podcast on iNews. You can download it. Just search for X's and Omar. And remember, next week we will be live at Gulfstream Park next weekend for the rest of the season. It's going to be exciting. Thanks for watching.